Texas has a hidden map, one the Tourism Bureau doesn't show you, streets that lead to cities that don't exist anymore, schools built for futures that got canceled, towns where the population dropped from thousands to double digits in a single year. Not because people left, but because there was suddenly nothing to stay for. These aren't the sanitized ghost towns you visit on a weekend road trip. They're the ones where a few people still live, surrounded by the architecture of collapse. You can stand on top of an entire drowned city, or drive down perfectly paved roads through empty fields where 10,000 people once worked, ate, raised families, and believed they were building something that would last. 11 towns. Some were killed by corporate decree. Some were swallowed by water or shaken by earthquakes tied to fracking. One got erased by 2 hurricanes and a fire. Another is maintained as a piece of real estate, a ghost town you can buy. They died different deaths, but they share something unsettling. They're abandoned, but not empty. The past never moved out. It just stands there in brick and adobe and silence, waiting in the Texas heat. Here are 11 creepiest forgotten small towns in Texas. Thurber, Texas. Thurber sits in Arath and Palo Pinto counties, and if you don't know where to look, you'll drive right past it. But from the 1880s through the 1930s, this was one of the largest company-owned towns in America. 10,000 residents from dozens of immigrant communities, all living under the complete control of the Texas and Pacific Coal Company. The company owned every structure: your house, the store where you bought food, the church where you prayed, the saloon where you drank, even the school your children attended. This wasn't a community that grew from settlers staking claims. It was built top-down for one purpose: extracting coal to power steam locomotives. Then railroads switched to oil in the 1920s. The company saw what was coming and made a decision. They didn't let Thurber fade slowly. They dismantled it. Houses were sold for scrap or physically moved to other towns. Families were scattered. By the late 1930s, the population had dropped from 5 figures to nearly 0. Not abandoned, erased. What's left is surreal. A 120-foot brick smokestack rises from the grass like a tombstone, except there's no grave, just absence. A restored church, a cemetery filled with Polish, Italian, and Mexican names. And then there are the brick streets, perfectly laid roads running through open pasture, built to carry a city's worth of traffic, now carrying nothing but wind. You can drive down them. The infrastructure for 10,000 lives is still here. The lives are gone. Thurber wasn't killed by a bust. It was a planned execution, and the company that pulled the trigger made sure the body disappeared. Orla, Texas. Orla sits in Reeves County, and when you drive through it, the weird thing is how recent everything feels. This isn't some faded mining camp from 1890. Orla's boom was the 2000s and 10s. Permian Basin fracking brought a wave of workers who lived in man camps and RV lots scattered across the desert. There were actual traffic jams out here, pop-up stores, the kind of chaotic energy that comes with fast oil money. Then prices dropped. The workers left. Not slowly, over years. Just gone, in months. What's left isn't charming. It's contemporary debris rotting in the sun. Trailer parks with vinyl siding curling off in long strips. Gas stations with logos you've seen 1,000 times on I-10, now bleached and cracking. Metal buildings that still smell like diesel. The post office is one of the only signs the federal government remembers this place exists. Maybe 100 people are still here, living in what's left of a boom that didn't even finish drying. The unsettling part is how fast it happened. Most ghost towns had decades to die. Orla collapsed so quickly the ruins haven't had time to look historical. The decay is aggressive. It looks like a movie set for the end of the world, except the end was just money moving somewhere else. The silence feels wrong because it was full of noise so recently. Trucks, drills, voices, the constant hum of work. Now it's wind hitting sheet metal and the occasional dog barking at nothing. Indianola, Texas. Indianola was a major port on Matagorda Bay in Calhoun County, and in the mid-1800s, it rivaled Galveston. It was the primary entry point for German immigrants flooding into Texas and a critical supply depot for the frontier. Ships unloaded goods, people, and ambition onto its docks. The town built churches, hotels, warehouses. It had a future. Then the Gulf of Mexico came for it. The first hurricane hit in 1875, killing hundreds and flattening most of the town. The residents, stubborn, optimistic Texan, rebuilt. They believed in the place enough to try again. 11 years later, a second hurricane struck. This one brought a fire with it. The storm surge destroyed the town while it burned. The post office closed within a year. The county seat moved inland. By 1887, Indianola was gone, not declining. Gone. What makes it unsettling is what you don't see. The town site is mostly underwater now, or buried under sand and sediment. A granite monument stands near the shore, a statue of La Salle. And during low tide, if you know where to look, you can see them. The dark shapes of foundations, the fragments of walls, the remnants of a cemetery. You're standing on top of a city, the streets where children played, the homes where families slept, the graves where they were buried. All of it is right here, under your feet, under the water. Indianola is a ghost town you can't visit, only stand above. The horror is knowing the ruins are there, just out of sight, preserved in the mud of the bay. Glenrio, Texas. Glenrio sits right on the Texas-New Mexico state line, and for decades that split was the whole business model. Texas side had the gas station, lower fuel taxes. New Mexico side had the bars, looser liquor laws. The town existed to catch people driving Route 66. Motels, diners, the Art Deco Little Juarez Cafe. From the 1920s into the early 70s, traffic poured through and Glenrio made its living off that. Then Interstate 40 opened in 1973. It didn't plow through Glenrio or knock anything down. It just bypassed the town by a mile. The river of cars that had kept everything alive moved south, and Glenrio stopped mattering. Businesses closed fast, families left. By the 80s, the place was done. What's still there looks like someone walked away mid-sentence. The Little Juarez Cafe stands with its curved front and block letters, but the structure's rotting. Motel units are open to the weather. The gas station canopy sags under its own weight. These aren't old in the romantic sense. They're mid-century, the kind of places your grandparents stopped at, now coming apart in the wind. And the quiet is wrong. This was a place built around noise, engines, radios, people yelling for coffee or a room. Now it's just metal creaking and signs swinging on rust. Glenrio died because the world drew a new line and kept moving. It's proof that infrastructure doesn't negotiate, and when it leaves, you're already gone. Terlingua, Texas. Terlingua sits in Brewster County, deep in the Chihuahuan Desert near Big Bend. It's been abandoned twice. The first time was gradual. From the late 1800s through World War II, the Chisos Mining Company ran a mercury operation here, extracting cinnabar ore with mostly Mexican labor. The conditions were brutal. Workers lived in stone huts, breathed toxic fumes, died young. When the company went bankrupt after the war, everyone left. What remained? Ruins of miners' homes, the company store, the mine owner's mansion on the hill. Then people came back. In the 60s and 70s, artists and drifters showed up, drawn by isolation and cheap land. They moved into the ruins, built new structures around the old ones, made a community inside the bones of the dead town. Today, Terlingua gets tourists. It's known for a chili cook-off and a quirky vibe. But the full-time population is tiny, and they live right next to the crumbling stone structures. You can sit on your porch with coffee and stare at the shell of a house where a family died from exhaustion and mercury poisoning 100 years ago. The desert silence here feels thick, two eras layered on top of each other, the mining nightmare and the counterculture dream occupying the same ground. Neither one fully real anymore, neither one gone. It's not a ghost town. It's a place where two different kinds of ghosts share space, under a sky too big to care. Claremont, Texas. Claremont in Kent County got built in 1892 for one reason: county seat. The whole town, its identity, its money, its reason for existing, hung on the courthouse, the jail, the political gears that came with running a county. For a while, that worked. Then the railroad went around it in the early 1900s, picked other towns with better access. Claremont started losing people in relevance, but it still had the courthouse. That kept it technically alive. Then the 1950s happened. After a vote that split the county, the seat moved to Jayton, a town that was doing better, easier to reach. That was the end. Without its political purpose, Claremont had nothing left. The government packed up, businesses closed, families left. The population dropped to single digits, where it stayed. What's left centers on the 1895 red sandstone courthouse, a beautiful building that's falling apart in real time. It used to be the most important structure for hundreds of square miles, the hub of law, order, civic life. Now it's a shell. Windows gone, roof caving in, stone getting swallowed by wind and weeds. It's not just a ruin, it's a monument to authority that died, to how fragile a town becomes when it's built around one thing that can disappear with a vote. Claremont's death wasn't an accident or some disaster. It was a democratic decision. A different box got checked. That's what makes it unsettling. The town didn't collapse. It got relocated, erased by agreement. Bluffton, Texas. Bluffton and Llano County drowned on purpose. The original town thrived in the 19th century along the Colorado River. Farms, businesses, a hotel, a bank, a cemetery where generations were buried. Then in the 1930s, the Lower Colorado River Authority decided the region needed hydroelectric power and water for growing cities like Austin. Lake Buchanan would be created. Bluffton was in the way. Residents had no choice. Sell your land, move your families. The entire town relocated a few miles away to what's now called New Bluffton. In 1937, the dam was completed and the lake filled. Old Bluffton disappeared under hundreds of feet of water, its streets and structures submerged, preserved in the cold and dark. But during severe droughts, and Texas has them regularly, the lake level drops dramatically, and Old Bluffton comes back. Tombstones from the cemetery rise first, jutting from the cracked mud. Then the concrete foundations of the hotel and bank emerge. The outlines of streets become visible. You can walk on the lakebed among the ruins. In a place that wasn't supposed to be seen by human eyes again after 1937, the town's visibility is a barometer of disaster. When Bluffton appears, it means the water is gone, the drought is severe, and the entire region is in crisis. The ghosts don't rise because of hauntings. They rise because the climate is failing, and walking through it feels surreal, wrong. You're on the bottom of a lake, surrounded by the bones of a town that was sacrificed so distant cities could have electricity and long showers. Old Bluffton is Texas's Atlantis. Every time it surfaces, it's a warning no one wants to hear. Barstow, Texas. Barstow and Ward County died slow. The Pecos River killed it, the same river that built it in the first place. They founded the town in the 1890s. Irrigation made the farms work. Crops came in, money followed, and Barstow became the county seat. They put up a courthouse and a high school that didn't look like a school at all. 3 stories, brick, more like something you'd see in a state capitol. It was huge. They believed the place would last. The river had other plans. Salt started creeping into the water. Mineral deposits upstream, farm runoff, natural processes nobody understood or cared about, until it was too late. At first, it seemed fine. Then the crops started dying. The soil went bad. You couldn't grow anything. The whole economy ran on irrigation, and the irrigation was poison now. The county seat moved to Monahans in the 1930s. People left in waves. Stores closed. Barstow shrank and never bounced back. There are still a few residents, but they live in what's left of someone else's dream. The high school is the worst part. 3 stories of brick with rows of windows that don't look into anything anymore. They built it for hundreds of kids who were supposed to grow up and take over a town that worked. Instead, it just sits there. Empty halls, dust, birds nesting in the classrooms. They built it like a promise. The land broke the promise. Not all at once, slow, invisible, across decades. That's worse, maybe. A hurricane you can point to. This just crept in through the water until nothing worked anymore and everyone had to leave. Toyah, Texas. Toyah in Reeves County is the oldest town in the county. Started in the 1880s as a railroad and ranching hub. For decades, it survived the usual problems: economic downturns, the slow fade of rail travel, the isolation of far west Texas. It survived a major fire in 1904 that destroyed much of downtown. It survived the Depression. The town was resilient, built on the stubborn determination that keeps people in harsh places long after logic says to leave. Then 2020. A 5.0 magnitude earthquake, rare for the region and widely blamed on wastewater injection from nearby fracking operations, shook the town hard. Buildings that had stood for over a century, already weakened by age and neglect, cracked and crumbled. The beautiful shell of Toyah High School, an adobe and brick structure that had survived 100 Texas summers, was damaged further. Walls that had withstood fire and economic collapse couldn't withstand the ground itself turning against them. What's left now is a collection of ruins in multiple stages of decay. The adobe structures are the most haunting. They don't collapse sharply like brick or wood. They soften, they melt. The walls round at the edges, the corners erode, and the whole structure seems to be slowly reabsorbed by the desert, returning to the earth it came from. The town looks organic in its death, like it's being digested. The earthquake wasn't a natural disaster in the traditional sense. It was a consequence, a side effect of the same oil and gas industry that boomed in nearby Orla, that brought wealth and workers and chaos to the region, then moved on. Toyah survived a century of hard luck only to be shaken apart by the extraction economy happening just over the horizon. The old ghosts of ranchers and railroad men were literally rattled by the new ghosts of fracking. The town that couldn't catch a break finally broke. Lobo, Texas. Lobo sits in Culberson County, and what happened here is weirder than anything else on this list. It died the normal way. Railroad stop in the early 1900s, farming community that dried up in the 1960s, completely empty by 1991. Standard West Texas ghost town. Then in 2001, a group of friends from Germany bought the whole thing, not to fix it up or flip it. They kept the buildings, motel, post office, gas station, swimming pool, just stable enough not to collapse. They threw an annual music festival called the Lobo Desert Disco. People danced in the ruins. It was a private art project, a curated version of abandonment. The town's been for sale multiple times since, marketed as a ghost town you can buy. Purchasable nostalgia. What makes Lobo unsettling isn't that it's falling apart. It's that it isn't. The buildings are too intact. The abandonment feels staged. It sits in this uncomfortable space between ruin and preservation. Too clean to be forgotten. Too empty to be real. Walking through it feels like a movie set, not a place where people actually lived. The story doesn't belong to the town anymore. It belongs to whoever buys it next. This is the most postmodern ghost town in Texas. It didn't fade into history. It became a product. And that's stranger than a hurricane or an oil bust because it forces a question none of the other towns do. If a ghost town gets bought, maintained, and sold like real estate, is it still a ghost town or just a museum pretending to be one? Sarita, Texas. Sarita in Kennedy County isn't abandoned. That's what makes it the most unsettling entry on this list. It's the company town of the King Ranch, one of the largest ranches in the world, named for Sarita Kennedy, one of the ranch's matriarchs, and it hasn't collapsed or been erased. It's been preserved in permanent stasis. Kennedy County is one of the poorest and least populated counties in the United States, with a population around 400 spread across 1,300 square miles. Do the math on that. You could walk for hours and never see another human. The King Ranch and other massive private operations own virtually all of it. There is no private property for sale to outsiders, no way for the town to grow, no economic mobility. The population of Sarita has remained frozen at roughly 200 for decades, existing purely to serve the ranch. The town has the infrastructure of normalcy: a courthouse, a post office, homes, a school, everything you'd expect from a functioning community. But it's surrounded on all sides by hundreds of thousands of acres of dense South Texas brush country, all privately owned. That landscape isn't the open desert of West Texas where you can see your death coming from miles away. This is thick, thorny mesquite and chaparral that presses in close, creating an invisible but absolute barrier. You can live here, but only if you're part of the system. You can leave, but there's nowhere nearby to go. The next town might as well be on another continent. The silence here isn't the hollow echo of abandonment. It's the muffled quiet of a place where nothing is allowed to change. No new families moving in, no businesses opening, no expansion. The same faces, the same jobs, the same boundaries, year after year. The creepiness isn't decay, it's the opposite. Preservation without growth, life without change. Sarita is a living relic, a town held in a benevolent cage where the bars are made of property lines and economic dependency. Unlike Thurber, which was destroyed when it became useless, Sarita has been kept alive in controlled suspension. It's not a ghost town. It's something stranger. A town that was never allowed to become a ghost, trapped in an endless present tense by the entity that owns the horizon in every direction. These towns aren't history. They're warnings written across Texas in brick and silence, and streets that lead nowhere. They prove the American dream doesn't fade. It gets canceled by a corporate memo, by a voter's checkmark, by a river that turns to poison, by an interstate built a mile to the left. What makes them creepy isn't the emptiness, it's the infrastructure that remains. The schools built for children who never grew up there. The roads engineered for traffic that stopped coming. The courthouses that once represented order, now representing only its absence. These places were designed for futures that got revoked, and the architecture of those canceled futures just stands there, waiting, outlasting the people who believed in it. Thurber's brick streets still run straight through pastures where homes used to be. Bluffton's tombstones emerge from lakebed mud during drought, marking graves that were never supposed to surface again. Glenrio's Art Deco diner still faces the road, but the road doesn't face back. Barstow's three-story school building stares out over fields poisoned by the same water that was supposed to feed them. Every one of these places has infrastructure that refuses to die, which somehow makes the death more visible. You can still visit most of them, walk their streets, stand in their ruins. Some will let you buy them, but you can't make them alive again, because what died wasn't just the population. It was the premise. The idea that if you work hard enough, build solid enough, believe strong enough, your town will survive. Thurber, Orla, Indianola, Glenrio, Terlingua, Claremont, Bluffton, Barstow, Toyah, Lobo, Sarita, 11 different deaths, but the same Texas-sized silence. And that silence isn't empty. It's full of the last sounds each place made before it stopped. The whistle of the last train, the slam of the last car door, the crack of foundations under earthquake, the water rising over graves. They're abandoned. But they're not empty, because forgetting would be easier than this, remembering what was lost, standing in the space where it used to be, and realizing it could happen anywhere, even where you are now.